Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Internet2 NET SkySync program featuring Morehouse College and the SkySync team. I'm Andrew Keating with Internet2, and I lead up the NET program management team. And I'll be introducing the panelists and presenters today, as well as being the moderator on today's webinar. Our featured presenter is Clifford Russell, who's the CIO at Morehouse College. And Cliff and Morehouse sponsored SkySync for NET service validation, and Cliff is going to talk about his team's experience implementing SkySync and how they use the solution at Morehouse. We're also joined by the Portal Architects team, the creators of SkySync, and they are experienced in working with Morehouse College, and we'll speak to that. They've also been working with a number of other universities in the higher ed community, and they will be discussing the SkySync solution and then also providing a demo later on in the hour today. Some brief background on Internet2. As most of you know, Internet2 is a community organization founded in 1996 by the major research universities to meet the research education community needs with regard to advanced technology and networking. So Internet2's goals are to realize the power of collaborative scale, create advanced technology capabilities, enable the new generation of applications, and achieve durable measures of control over the community's operating environment, and ultimately to drive innovation and to advance the global internet. So these are our kind of founding missions that remain true to this day. Internet2 is also a broader community than the higher education institutions. We represent, of course, our research education member institutions, but we also have affiliates, government agencies, and connect with our global NREN partners around the world, as well as regional networks in the United States. So Internet2 members and partners, nearly 280 universities, 42 research and education network, regional networks in the United States, 83 industry members, including Portal Architects and SkySync, and really is, Internet2 is focused on the advanced technology needs of our members, and we have been since the founding in 1996. The Internet2 network, as most of you all know, is 100 gig connectivity at around 50 different sites, and is a nationwide backbone with extensive capacity hooking up to all of our member universities as well as partners and commercial service providers. The NET program was designed about 3 years ago by a group of CIOs that got together and really looked to leverage community capacity in terms of the network and other assets like federated identity in order to advance higher education in the cloud. And so over the past 3 years, a number of service portfolios have emerged: trust and identity, software as a service, infrastructure platform security, video voice collaboration, and digital content for research and scholarly inquiry. So the NET portfolio areas have expanded over the past few years, and now we have services available in a number of these different categories. The SkySync solution actually fits into several overlapping categories because it is a software solution, but as you'll hear about today, it integrates with a number of infrastructure and platform solutions and enables data to move between a variety of cloud service offerings. So as with many of our services available in NET+, there's overlap between some of these portfolio areas, and so service integration is a core component of what we're aiming to achieve and what the community has been working on through NET+ over the past few years. So how does NET+ work? It is a peer-owned, governed, and peer-directed cloud service portfolio. So the service validation phase is when Internet2 member universities sponsor a service, get together and test the service, tune the service to the needs of the research and education community. And so when a service validation is complete, the service is then open for early adopter subscriptions and then ultimately for general availability subscriptions. So the SkySync offering that we're going to be talking about today is currently in the early adopter phase, so it is available and open for campus subscription after having gone through service validation with Morehouse College leading and sponsoring that effort. So Net Plus today represents a growing ecosystem of cloud services and providers, and you see here a sample of the logos representing some of the growing landscape of services. I think in particular we're going to be talking about Box and some of the other cloud storage solutions, storage and collaboration platforms, because SkySync integrates with those and enables data to move between Box and Office 365 and other cloud and on-premise solutions. But the Net Plus landscape of services and providers has been growing steadily thanks to community efforts of sponsorship and validation of these services. So why the Internet2 NET Plus Cloud? Over $200 million in value has been generated through community efforts. Over 300 universities have participated in optimizing for the portfolio and adding services. Over 50 services have been moved through service validation and are available to the community. And so, the Net Plus is really a community effort that has led to a number of services being validated that provides a significant amount of benefit and growing benefit, not just to those campuses that have validated services, but then to the rest of the community as well. And now at this point, I'd like to turn things over to Cliff Russell, the CIO at Morehouse College, who's going to talk specifically about how he and his team evaluated SkySync, deployed it on their campus, and then their aims for sponsoring SkySync as a Net Plus offering and the benefits that they see from engaging with the community and with cloud service providers. Cliff.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks very much. I'm glad to be here. One of the things that we needed to do, we've transitioned to a new president at Morehouse College about 2 years ago, and he established a new management team, and essentially the first ever CIO. That's how much he esteems, President John Wilson esteems technology, understanding that even in liberal arts and in our segment in HBCU, the new pedagogical approaches that higher ed needs to adopt will be dependent almost completely on technological innovation. So what you face is, like most institutions in higher ed, are a set of constraints, whether they're technical or human capital or financial. You need to manage those. We knew that we needed to do something with our unstructured data that made it more available, provided the kind of collaboration that we currently did not have. But also, as important, we needed to be able to secure that data. And I think just a cursory glance at the headlines of late should give all CIOs, all data custodians pause around the security that they're able to provide. So Box was obvious for us because they had the most mature articulation of their security procedures and policies and methodologies, so that we could provide that to our auditors, make the data more available to our users, but also address the compliance issues without having to make the unrealistic expenditures on our on-premise systems to bring them into compliance from a cybersecurity standpoint. So Box took care of all of that. When we discovered that Box was available through the Net Plus community, for all the reasons that Andrew just articulated, it was a no-brainer to jump feet first into that. But then we faced what we needed to do in actually getting our data off-premise onto the Box.com platform. And we tried to roll our own a little bit on that, and quickly realized that there were just some barriers to doing that with traditional methods like RoboCopy or even some of the other tools like Beyond Compare or something like that. So we engaged our Box engineers, our Box team, and they basically provided the introduction to SkySync. And immediately we were able to address these specific issues in data transfer and verification that we faced. And really it transformed the migration process for us. So like the slide says, this is giving you all the reasons why we felt very strongly that Box was a match for us. You know, not only, we're looking for partnerships as we move forward. So we were able to speak to that with Box, not just supporting our file share needs, that's the basic thing, but you know, how do we deal with curriculum enhancements and internship opportunities and all those things. So it's a strong partnership, and it gave us the assurances, being that tightly linked with them, that they weren't going to make a recommendation to us that was just off the cuff. Once we engaged with the SkySync team, it was obvious that it was an excellent recommendation. We received a level of support that truly moved them into a partner range. For us, we're small. We're a small shop. We don't have a lot of human resources to throw at this, and they provided the tier 2 and 3 technical support that we needed to, you know, 24/7 operation of moving this data, and it just gave us very high confidence in working with them. We needed to be able to migrate the data over a short period of time, like the slide says, for all the reasons that I highlighted previously. Our current storage systems were non-compliant. They're just basic drawbacks in security. I mean, you have to think of everything from physical security all the way up to the logical security or network security. And because Box encrypts the data at rest and in transit, it addressed that. And not only that, they were able to provide the documentation that we needed for our auditing requirements, and that was a huge win for us, because you know, you have enough on your plate to try and make sure that the data is available to your users, but then when you are trying to comply with the auditor's requirements, there's a tremendous amount of documentation that comes with that. We are taking a cloud-first approach. We are looking at the entire suite of applications that our users need, and there has to be a very strong justification to run that need on-prem. And there are very few applications that we find when we run them through that decision matrix that actually do have a need to be run on premises. So Box is one of the key pieces of that. Office 365 and others are key pieces of that. We tie them all together with our Centrify single sign-on system, SSO. It does give us an agile platform for accessing our unstructured data. If you know anything about the Box platform, you know that it first and foremost is a premier collaborative tool, and we are using it very effectively for that. We've had faculty members who are non-technical to their own admission be very excited in the ability to share, say, copywritten material with their students without violating copyright, but also without requiring the student to acquire that particular material, and making it available for them day one of class. And I get reports like that all the time. The students are very, very excited about the ability to collaborate with one another. It's a natural thing for millennials to collaborate. And this platform, because it's a mobile-first approach, they're able to jump in feet first with their mobile devices, share data. They're using it in ways that we can't imagine, and it's just a very exciting thing to see. So I'm with the slide is the transition planning. The need for a rapid migration was addressed. One of the issues that we had was trying to transfer the data over the network, and we just thought that would work. And for a variety of different reasons and the laws of physics, that wasn't going well. So one of the things that we had to do was take the data, transfer it to encrypted drives, and then ship them back to box.com. But then how do we handle the delta? And that's where SkySync really shined. They were able to help us verify the sync between and address the delta directly in a very easy-to-use platform. we're able to do things that potentially larger institutions were not, which is one of the reasons why we did want to sponsor them. We're a smaller institution, but we do have a very large global brand, and we can stretch the envelope a little bit, and we did that. And we were able to use the tool very effectively to successfully migrate our data. The next step for us with SkySync is one of the things that you do. When we migrated all of our file server data, you find that there are still pockets of data throughout your organization that need to be found, verified, and transferred. So a lot of that data actually resides on desktops. So as we discover those, we want to absolutely use SkySync in the future to help us migrate that. There may be some other applications for SharePoint, migrating data in and out or between Box and SharePoint. We're really looking to sort of see how elastic the tool is in things that we don't know that we need to do yet. Mark and his team were tremendous in supporting us in taking our questions and then either revealing feature stuff that we were not aware of, or helping us use the features that we were to greater effect. So for me, I think that just encapsulates it. Or trying to tie it up in a nutshell. We talk about the false start with the online tool. I've gone into that. The encrypted hard drives at this point, I would recommend anybody that has a significant data set that they leverage that and then use SkySync to manage the Delta syncing. It works. It just plain and simple works. That is the reason why we are more than happy to endorse the product and encourage our peer institutions to check it out, to leverage it, and especially if you're facing a first-time migration. I can't imagine us having been successful doing that without SkySync support and the effectiveness of the tool. For all the reasons, I mean, the slide pretty much speaks for itself. We realized our peer institutions could benefit from our experience. We are more than willing to stand up and say that anytime we have a success. And I wouldn't recommend it if we had not gotten the level of support. It's not just the tool functionality. It works as advertised. But when we did run into any technical issue, literally they were available to us anytime we called, and took some pretty extraordinary steps. And I won't get into, I don't want to commit them to anything. But they really helped us. And like I said, we would not have been able to be as successful as we have been in our migration without their support. I think I may have outpaced the slides a little bit. And I don't know, one of the things that we did do, this is at the bottom bullet is recommend Box University training curriculum. We're in the process of rolling that curriculum out to our entire institution. It was really easy. It was one of our smoothest migrations with the most positive feedback. We're very excited about the activities around the quotas. And I don't know if we're supposed to talk about that, but we're very excited about that. Our community is as well. And a misunderstanding among some users regarding my documents replacement. If I had anything to do over again, I would just rename BoxSync My Documents and avoid a whole lot of confusion because it's different from the paradigm that users are used to. I would absolutely tell anyone looking to do what we were doing to consider the My Documents mask for completely seamless usability, and then roll out the additional features that you get through the web interface for collaboration. We're also very excited about the Stream acquisition and look to leverage that with our VDI deploy that we're in the midst of now. This just gives you some of the benefits. One of the things that I did find out is there's actually 5 NAS units that we were able to repurpose. We definitely resolved accessibility and compliance and security risk issues with this. radically reduce the administrative burdens now that we can move people's grooming and management of their data and collaboration out to them, out to the end user. As we get more people trained on the advanced features through Box University, I expect there to be an explosion. But I engage with the faculty members and the students regularly in their meetings, and there isn't a single meeting where we don't get some expression of deep gratitude about bringing Box to Morehouse, and usually a set of stories on how they're able to use it effectively to do what they do easier than before. For me, there's no greater reward. It's driving costs down because I would have to have made a significant investment beyond the expenses that we have for Box to update our systems around physical security, capacity, to provide a level of service that still would not have the agility of the Box.com platform, especially when you factor in things like the mobile tools that are native to Box. It is integrated with our single sign-on. We are using Centrify for that. So it's a seamless transition between our different cloud platforms for our users. Box is just another tool in the toolkit that our users have access to. And I just spoke to the Box access and collaborative benefits that are just part and parcel of the way Box works.
Thank you, Cliff. I really appreciate you sharing the experiences and what you and your team have been able to accomplish with Box and SkySync. I think at this point we're going to shift gears a bit and ask the SkySync team to provide an overview of the product and how it works and the overall solution that's offered with an emphasis on Box, because we understand that a lot of the campuses interested in the solution are using Box, but as Cliff mentioned, many of you have other cloud platforms as well, and SkySync interoperates and moves data into and out of various clouds. So at this point, I'd like to ask Mark and the SkySync team to walk us through kind of how SkySync works, and then we'll shift gears to a demo as well. I'd also like to point out that for those of you listening, if you do have questions, feel free to write those in via the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get those answered in the chat, and if we have time at the end, we may have some discussion and try to answer them verbally. But at this point, Mark, why don't you lead us through the slides and tell us all about SkySync.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Brazeau. I'm one of the co-founders here at Portal Architects, and on the phone with me as well, I've got Steve Woodward, our chief architect, and Sean Becker. We're the three kind of co-founders of the company. Just 1 minute of quick background to give you a little history. Prior to this endeavor, we were SharePoint guys for 10 years. In fact, we won SharePoint's Most Innovative Partner Award back in 2010 out of 600,000 partners for Blob, a thing called Blob Management. It's exciting as it sounds. And then prior to that, we were FileNet guys for another 10 years prior to that. So we've been in the enterprise content management space, if you will, for over 20 years. So in its simplest sense, think of SkySync as really as a piece of pipe that can really connect Box and other platforms, other cloud platforms as well, to really any number of on-prem systems. And once we've established that connection, and by the way, I think there's close to 30 systems out there now. They're on our website. But once we've established that connection, you can really kind of establish any kind of use case scenario. So this could be a full bidirectional synchronization, a one-time migration, or a lot of times what we recommend is a copy job, which is really kind of an in-place migration. So you can actually have it kind of run in place and manage all the deltas for you in the background. You could do this at a very grand level at a root, all the way down to a single folder, if you wish, or anywhere in between. We've got all kinds of tools that kind of let you be a little surgical, if you will, on how you conduct that process. Steve's going to show you that and share that with you in the demo. I think it's important to emphasize that, if you think historically, a lot of these processes have always incurred a lot of, heavy lifting and a lot of services. This does not. This stuff's something you download, you install, and you can get up and running in fairly short order. SkySync is security safe. So what do you mean by that? This is our name's somewhat misleading. It kind of sounds like we have a service in the sky, we don't. This is a piece of software you're going to install behind your firewall, under your control, on your hardware. So we have no access to your content whatsoever. The only thing SkySync ever does is go out and gets an auth code to activate itself. But aside from that, you have full control. In fact, SkySync doesn't even save or cache a file, or even as you can see, a box password. We grab a token from box and hang on to the token and use that to communicate to box. Think of SkySync, if you will, as a kind of always acting on the admin's behalf. So it's sitting in the background. It's going to have elevated credentials on the box side, as well as elevated credentials on whatever source system you may have, and again is moving or transferring files to and from in the background. So theoretically, users never know SkySync exists. I won't get into all these details, but I'll just kind of touch on some. So when we built the product, we really designed it to, and because of its, I should back up a little bit, because of it's so easy to kind of download and install and kind of get running with little to no hand-holding, it's really kind of designed for any size enterprise. You don't need a group, a team of people to go deploy this thing. It's fairly simple. It can install on a single, VM or a workstation, all the way up to a multi, clustered server environment with a separate SQL database. So it's really designed for any size institution, and beyond files, it's mapping all the other stuff that kind of goes along with it too. So for systems that support it, metadata, we can migrate permissions. We can map home drive folders, and again, that's a very common use case where people have what they call personal home drives or P drives. Everybody's got their own nomenclature that they leverage for that paradigm. I think Steve's going to show you that in the demonstration today. We're also managing all the other, what we call kind of traditional friction between systems. So example, we manage document versions. Well, if you're syncing a network home drive to Box, Box has a concept of version. Network home drives have no concept of a document version. So for example, what we do in that particular paradigm is we'd always grab the latest version from Box, put that in the network home drive. If you update the network home drive, we'd automatically treat it as a new version in Box. We'll also manage file name transformations and conforms. So what I mean by that is you can put a whack in a file name, so like transformation/conform. You could do that in Box without issue. You couldn't put that in your network file share. So what we'd automatically do is replace that whack with an underscore automatically in your network file share. So again, I'm not going to give this whole list, but you can see there's all kinds of things that we basically do for you in the background automatically. You don't have to worry about it. Lastly, we're talking to really these platforms at their deepest level, so we're leveraging their APIs. We're not doing FTP or something like that. We're constantly managing state of these objects, so we know where everything is. And like I said earlier, it's designed to scale in mass. And with that, we'll hand it over to Steve Woodward for a demonstration.
Thanks, Mark. Hopefully everyone can see my screen coming across here as we switch, and everyone can hear me okay. As Mark mentioned, I'm just going to kind of take us through a quick demo of one scenario, one type of thing that SkySync can help many organizations do. As Mark mentioned, SkySync is all about connections. It's built around the concept of connections. And one very common case we see a lot with higher education, many areas, everyone has their own folder where the name of a folder represents a person or in the organization. For example, my folder being here, S. Woodward. And what we'd like to do is as we start to migrate or coexist or move this data off of our existing network shares and P drives, user drives, whatever we want to call them, and we'd like to place them in, say, a nice fresh new folder up in our cloud account in a provider like Box. And from there, Steve Woodward still owns his own files as part of his own account, and everyone is kind of taken care of, and we can start to retire all of our older infrastructure with P drives and things. So how does that work with SkySync? Kind of put on your administrator cap. The experience you'll see today would be the experience of the administrator. Our end users will hopefully use their map drive until we're ready, and then they start to use Box and all the great mobile tools. They don't necessarily know SkySync's in the background performing this integration and or migration for us. As Mark mentioned, just to kind of hammer home one more time, SkySync is built around the concept of connections. So we went very wide in the types and numbers of systems we wanted to connect to. So if you have on-premise ECM systems, on-premise SharePoints, network shares, various cloud repositories of all kinds of stripes, even some other legacy systems, some things like SFTP. SkySync has a very wide variety of connections that we can establish, and once we do, we provide tools to the administrators to use those, whether that's navigating something like a SharePoint, dragging and dropping content between repositories. You can see I've got a whole series of connections created there to show the breadth of things we could do. But these are all manual operations. They're nice for administrators to have the tools, but in the end, the real power of SkySync solution comes in when we can do what we call taking the concept of jobs to kind of glue our connections together, provide some templating and rules and automation on top of all that, and then SkySync will manage your data migration or coexistence going forward based on those rules with hopefully little to no more administrator interaction. And since it's an enterprise application, we'll see it's all around things like alerts and history reports and things so that we don't have to sit here and babysit the system. So let's take a look. Depending on what we're trying to accomplish, SkySync has different templates for different types of automation we might want to achieve. And like I said, one of the more detailed examples, but very common use case, is taking that user type structure we talked about and either using the folder names or perhaps doing some Active Directory magic, either way, to perform a scenario where we can tell people like, you know, hey, find your box folder, or we could leave it blank and take everything in their account from their personal drive. And I think I called that thing today, let me double check so I don't mess that up, udrive 0317. I would have already made a mistake. udrive 0317. And that's where I'll educate my users to see that, and I just have a date stamp on there so I don't step on other presentations of this type I do. And then really that's enough to give SkySync the ability to manage all those folders and things. There's a lot of more policies and rules we can apply to fine-tune the process. We can decide whether it's a bidirectional synchronization for like kind of slow walk migrations or long-term coexistence, whether we want to do a direct migration or a one-directional copy. All of the jobs can be fully scheduled, whether those schedules are very simple, like run once every day, migrate this stuff at midnight, whatever you want to do, or very advanced scenarios between, you know, only migrate data between midnight and 6 a.m. and only on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, you know, whatever organization's needs are, they can be very easily fulfilled via the scheduling for the different jobs to, you know, take into account when the systems are active, when you want to migrate the data, when you want to not impact operations. By filling out kind of the sheet here with different things on how we want to handle edge cases, you want SkySync to manage locks, so checking files in and out of various repositories for you, dealing with conflicts, dealing with deletes, how do you want SkySync to handle those cases? The administrator has full control over that. Administrators can set up full filtering, which is very powerful, to where they can use any attribute of the files, the extensions, the names, regular expressions, timestamps on the files to really start to get very surgical about things and or prioritize data so you can move things and say, if this file's been accessed within the last year, someone's looked at it, read it, modified, otherwise done something with it, let's migrate that right away. Maybe we'll have other jobs coming up behind cleaning up content that's, you know, 1 to 5 years old, and then maybe we'll even have another filter set that says, you know, if it's 5 years old, don't do anything with it, don't migrate it at all. So again, just full control over your administrators, and if you get into ECM systems, things with metadata, you can use those attributes as well to make decisions and take the output of a workflow system or a status code or something and say, hey, if it's ready for publishing or if it's ready to be migrated, go ahead, SkySync, and grab that content and migrate it. So you can get very, very surgical with what you want to do. Then it's all a matter of, you know, how many other features do you want to involve? Do you want to enable permission migrations? Perhaps you have to provide SkySync with a group and user account map so we can tell how to translate various users and group concepts over to your new box environment. It might be a very straightforward process if you're AD integrated or if you've done a direct import. And then really just like I said, fill out all of your properties if you have to. We have a full series of AD integration points and LDAP configuration where you can really get very surgical with how you want to control your integration between box and your existing systems, and to the point where you can even just cherry pick and start to leave out individual people that you don't want as part of the migration. Full control. But in any case, once you've kind of defined all your rules, you let SkySync go off and handle that. SkySync creates what we call a master job. It immediately analyzes your situation, starts to match all those individual folders up to their individual accounts in Box and Enterprise. And here you can see I've got about a dozen different people that I'm migrating based on those simple rules. your organization could have hundreds and thousands. SkySync will manage that all, including to the point of growing and shrinking that list as people are brought into and removed from the organization as migrations are complete. You can, of course, simplify your list. But in the end, like I said, SkySync, we want to be fully automated. It's all around being an enterprise tool. Anywhere where there's any questions, SkySync has a full history report and a full logging report. We tell you everything we're doing. If there's anything we can't accomplish, SkySync will generally warn your administrators and give them an example or a tip on how to resolve any problems. Anything we do as far as adding our conventions and things, moving files and folders, if we look here at the individual job, let me select that guy, we'll see every action SkySync takes, from creating files and folders, adding permissions, moving things around. Anything we do, we log it. All those reports are fully available to you offline, including all the way down to the part where if you configure SkySync with email notifications and things, SkySync will just email you the reports, it will email you for help, and your administrators can go on with all their other busy tasks. So we felt like we put a lot into SkySync to make it fully kind of automated and powerful. It's an enterprise application, but at the same time, it's simple to learn and use. And this is just one of the many types of use cases SkySync can help organizations with, whether it's a migration, a coexistence, any of the wide depth and breadth of platforms and systems we connect to. We can help you migrate, move your data around, and really just get it structured and organized the way you want in a very simple fashion. With that, I think that was kind of the end of the live demonstration. I'll turn it back over to Andrew again for closing, and if there are any questions, I'll be available and some of my team's available either for live questions or offline, however the panelists want to do it. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it. And while we're switching back to the slide deck, I think what we're actually going to cover quickly before we get to Q&A is to come back to Mark for an overview of kind of what's coming next and what's on the roadmap for SkySync. So Mark, if you can kind of talk us through where your development efforts are and what we might be seeing in the next 6 to 12 months in SkySync as you continue to iterate and expand on the solution, that would be great. And then we'll finish up with some Q&A and discussion.
Sure. Let's see, we kind of lost the slide there, Andrew. Or I did anyways.
Sorry, there we are. Should be up now.
Yeah, there we go. So hopefully the slide isn't too confusing. So I'll try to explain it best I can. So if you kind of think about what we do today, we kind of have a kind of remotely controlled set of servers that kind of sit behind your firewall, and that's kind of trying to, this illustration is going to depict that with those two servers kind of at the bottom center, controlled by a thick client, if you will. What's coming out later this year is that's going to go to a web client, but that's not so much the excitement. It's the reason we've gone to a web client is now will enable you to control not only these servers locally, but you can control remote servers as well. One of the requests we've heard from many of our customers, and frankly that's how we've always built our product, is feedback based on client use cases, is I want to be able to remotely control those services. And even more importantly, we've heard from many clients that I really want to control the desktop level as well. So as you folks may, obviously if you're aware, if you have Box, there's a Box Sync tool on the desktop today. Virtually every cloud provider has one. The challenge that we've encountered in some organizations anyways is they said, look, that's a little too loose for us. We'd like to kind of rein that in and have a little bit more control of what's getting synced back to Box or one of our systems of record. How can we do that? So imagine all those tools that we have today that Steve just shared with you, and now putting the power of that control still at the admin level, but controlling really all those functions at the desktop level. So now I can define, hey, group of users, you're going to subscribe to this profile, and this profile, by the way, you don't have to sit there and drag files anymore into a folder or into a specific folder. You can grab content from my documents, my pictures, or any folders that are defined by the profile and automatically sync those back to Box. But I'm only going to sync them back at this time, and I'm going to filter this content where you can't put maybe .move pictures in there or because we don't want vacation, movies, in our system of record. Or here's how many thread rights I'm going to give you. You've got this really untethered control of really what a user synchronization can look like. So the idea is you really have control over really every storage medium in your institution, whether that be centralized storage such as your NAS, your SAN, SharePoint, open text document, whatever ECM platform you may have, along with really every storage medium, which also includes every desktop should you want to do that. The next kind of other, so that's kind of the global view of our kind of synchronization control, and then the kind of part and parcel of that, the plan is to really now also allow institutions to surface all this content within their own web interfaces. So we're going to provide a gateway. That's that little plug. If you see a little kind of plug sticking above the icon of the screen, is allowing you to plug our stuff really into your stuff. So if you've got a particular application where you want to surface either content, hey, I want to surface my box content, my network file share content, my SharePoint content all in one interface in some specific UI that you have, you'll now be able to do that. You'll also be able to write your own custom API. So we may have a system that we don't support today. You may have some one-off system that you want to interface into SkySync. You'll be able to write into our API, or we could write that for you. So it just gives you again another level of flexibility within your institution of how you want to control and move content. And that's kind of the summation.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate that. So I'd like to encourage folks on the webinar to write in questions into the chat and the questions box. While people are doing that, I can recap and ask you, Mark, and Steve, and the rest of your team, a few that have come in that may be of interest to the full group. So there was one question regarding the amount of data that SkySync has moved into Box. I think this may have been in the context of the Morehouse College example and what you did there, but even outside of Morehouse, are there any limits on, amount of data that can be moved into or out of, or what SkySync can handle, or, what do you run into when it comes to quantities of data, and are there any limits on that?
Well, I mean, we haven't found that physical limit yet, so let me answer that two ways. At the end of the day, under the covers anyways, SkySync doesn't really care how much content is being moved. I mean, we measure and meter that way, but really what we care about most is the number of objects. So think of SkySync as a traffic cop. It doesn't matter whether I'm moving, motorcycles are going across the intersection or school buses. It doesn't really matter. I just care about how many motorcycles, how many school buses I have. We've done access in over 100 million objects without any issue. We frankly just stopped the test because it ran for 45 days and we were tired of it running, but there was nothing to stop it. When you do get to that kind of volume, you're going to need to put this, of course, on a separate database. Today we support SQL, but we are down the road going to support MySQL and support Oracle DB as well if you happen to be an Oracle shop. To put again in better context, right now we're working with a client that's moving a petabyte. Talking to another client who wants to move 20 petabytes. I think where the challenge gets there is really the amount of parallelism we can run into the cloud service platform. How much can the cloud service platform absorb at any given time? The good news is Box, certainly one of the most strongest platforms from an API perspective we've ever seen. Theoretically, it's been rumored that they could do about 3 million objects a day, which is incredible. So probably a long answer to the short question, but hopefully that puts it all in context.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. And I'm sure that we have some universities with some very large Box deployments, and so if ever you'd have a community that would help you test the limits with Box or with any of the other services, I think this community would be glad to do that. So look forward to pushing the boundaries there. Another question that has come in is around connectivity to other platforms, and so one of our attendees is wondering whether there's connectivity to Zytos available, and maybe you could also speak to the range of platforms and solutions that you support. I know there's a full list on your website that people can go to, but if If for some reason there isn't a solution listed on your website that a university is really interested in moving data into or out of, is there a process by which you all add or evaluate additional services for compatibility, or build that into the platform? Maybe you could talk about how you're developing connectivity that's into different clouds, and then on Zythos specifically.
All right, so let me answer that in 3 parts. So in regards to Zythos, I actually have been doing some homework on Zythos. It looks like, and again, I'm not a Zythos expert by any stretch of the imagination, but it appears that Zythos 9.0 does have an exposed API. So at the kind of the crux of all matters, there always has to be some hook, if you will, that we can communicate to a system. So that's always obviously the minimum protocol for us, communicating. If not, plan B is then they need to export to some kind of platform where we can get, gain access to that content. So in fact, we're talking to another university right now, and I think one of the discussions is possibly they upgrade. I think they're on 7. They're going to go from 7 to 9, just in a side system, and then we'll access and write the API against 9. Again, assuming they have an API that's exposed, yes, we can write an API, or write to that API. Typically takes us 4 to 6 weeks once we're in the development queue. That layer is fairly thin from our perspective anyways, from an architectural point of view, so it's really not that difficult. We typically write 2 to 3 a quarter, and again, we base that on a really kind of consumer demand. So that's a many Zythos requests. We would build that, or we'd build that at our cost, with in tandem with the client. The other kind of component that kind of goes along with that is we need some kind of sandbox environment to test against. So as long as we can, if we're writing the connector, we just need to obviously do some kind of QA, if you will, and also get obviously a high-level understanding of what operations they expect this API to do and what are its capabilities and limits. What's coming in 4.0, again, we will have an exposed API. At that juncture, there'd be nothing stopping from a third party building it, themselves to build it. It makes it a little bit easier for us to build it, I guess, at some level, but I think that the main crux of it is it literally makes it so anybody can build some little one-off for a system that maybe we haven't heard of before.
Great. Thanks, Mark. That's really helpful. Another question that's come in somewhat along the same line, but there's a university that would like to explore potentially using SkySync to migrate data from their Sakai LMS learning management system into Box, and I expect that LMS migrations might be something that's a common use case in the community, whether it's into Box or whether it's just moving data into another LMS or into another cloud service. So I think that Sakai actually uses WebDAV. So I don't know if you could speak to if you've had any experience with LMSs in particular or WebDAV specifically, or how that might work.
Hey, Steve, I know you've got some experience with WebDAV. Can you chime in on that response?
Yeah, we do have a connector that will be available with 4.0 for WebDAV. It's going to be our reference implementation. We're actually going to put it out as open source code. That'll be how, if people want to write a connector, they'll have that all available. So any platform, we advertise we can talk to 30, but there are a few that are kind of catch-alls. So if anyone supports CMIS or OpenStack or WebDAV or a couple similar ones, there's at least one more I can't remember right now. They apply to multiple platforms, but we've never seen a platform that just works directly. It seems like they all have a little quirk or they've moved something around. But usually with a little bit of fine-tuning, we can talk to those kind of systems that support those APIs today. So I don't know if that applies to the specific example that was brought up in the question, but if they claim to support WebDAV, it's certainly probably a lot closer than the custom developer connector route that Mark mentioned.
Great. No, that's really helpful. Thanks, Steve. And I think the path forward on this would be, engagement between a university and SkySync, and then, we could document a solution and potentially make that available to the rest of the community in a use case or a white paper of some kind. Another question that has come through in the chat here is along the different lines, and they're wondering what kind of management-friendly reporting does SkySync have? So maybe if you guys could speak to, I don't know, Mark or Steve, on the reporting and logging capabilities in SkySync.
Right, I'll take that one, Mark. SkySync has a lot of information available, although I would say probably at current it's more focused on administrators than it is more management types. There's a lot of logging. Typically that stuff is just in the background, assuming there's no problems. It's just, you know, status information and things, but it's very helpful if there are, you know, needs to be a diagnosis of a problem, connectivity problem or configuration problem. Everything SkySync does is kept in an audit report and an audit log, so that's all available. They can be emailed out and exported from the system, so they can be, you know, imported into Excel and things where they could be massaged however, but there's not really like dashboards or anything built on top of that. We do have some of those features in our pipeline for later this year. So I guess to answer specifically for managers, they'd still have to kind of do a little bit of their own. They would have an Excel spreadsheet or something where they could draw some graphs from some data. It's all there, but nothing like hand packaged to them like a, you know, print report screen. But coming later this year, we will have some of that along with some dashboards as well to give the managers a little bit more feedback on what's going on, as opposed to the nitty-gritty details that the administrators get today. It's a lot of the same data, it just needs to be packaged differently. So I hope that helps the community know where we're going on that one.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's really helpful. And we have a somewhat similar question around admin level capabilities and what different types of users can do in SkySync. And I think it speaks specifically to a common use case in the higher ed community, especially at larger universities where, you know, they may want to delegate things to individual schools or colleges or departments or any kind of organizational unit below the full enterprise level. And so this attendee is wondering, you know, if the admin level capability in SkySync is distributable. So could they do something like delegating to an individual school or college, or how would they go about doing that if they were going to architect and say that it's not the box admin across the whole enterprise that's going to be moving data or synchronizing data? It's really, you know, this one department or organizational unit that's going to be doing a move from, let's say, a legacy file server that they might have into Box, and how would that be delegated in SkySync?
Right. I'll take this one again, Mark. With today, the model SkySync has today with our 3.0 release, what's generally available, it's not really suited for distributed administration. Basically, if you can access the SkySync panel on the box, now it's controlled, it's typically only an admin or a select group of 2 or 3 admins organizationally wide that access it and actually configure it anyway, but those people have kind of a flat access to it, which is correct. Going forward with our 4.0, and Mark mentioned, I think, in the slide part about the futures, we're going to have a lot more of, you know, distributed features built in. So today we would probably recommend, and we've done this for several clients already, we'd recommend that maybe you approach SkySync as a more departmental or school-based solution, to where each individual school kind of controls their own little small SkySync silo, if you will. That's what we can offer today, and we do have some customers doing that. It's, of course, kind of a manual process. With our 4.0 release, as Mark talked about in our future slideshow, again, going through this year, so if, you know, institutions are interested in even seeing and shaping some of that early with betas, you know, we're starting to talk to customers about signing up and playing with betas later this summer. We're going to have a whole distributed set of features in there, and the idea would be, you would say this AD group of people can do this in SkySync, this AD group of people can do that in SkySync. So you can start to tier it a little bit to say, these are my global admins, and this is maybe just my school admin. He can only manipulate this subset of the data. So that's, I think, where the question was coming from. That's where we're going, and that's, you know, what we'll be shaping here over the next 3 to 6 months. We're building those features and functionalities right now, as a matter of fact.
Great, thanks. That's really good. I realize we're at the top of the hour, but we have 2 more questions, and I'd like to try to see if we could get through them at least quickly. There's one question that may have to be taken offline because it's a little bit technical and involved, and that question is about how permissions are mapped, specifically AD to Box. So wondering whether the mapping is stored in CSV files, SQL, or AD itself. So permission mapping, and if we need to take that offline for an in-depth follow-up, we can. The other question I'd like to throw out there is whether SkySync could be used to migrate data from consumer accounts, such as personal Dropbox accounts. So if a university has individual user accounts that are owned by that user that are not under an enterprise management, so a personal Dropbox account, a personal Box account, could SkySync be used in that way? And hopefully, Mark or Steve, you guys could answer those two questions fairly quickly, and then we can call it a day here.
Okay. Yeah, Mark, I'll jump in again on both of those, kind of in reverse order. Personal accounts, absolutely. As long as SkySync has the credentials, that's where the key comes in. With some of our automation on the enterprise stuff, we don't need credentials. We can do things on behalf of, so we don't have to have Joe's or Sam's or Steve's or Sally's email and password, so we can, impersonate them. For a personal connection, we certainly can. Just whoever's adding the connection, you'd have to literally type in, Joe user and Joe user's password, and then you could use SkySync to manipulate their content. So it's certainly possible. It's a little bit more maintenance intense. Going about the other direction, well, there's also what we call SkySync Lite, which is kind of a tray application. Mark mentioned it during the futures piece. That is kind of focused on our end user solution to literally just pop up and say, hey, Bill, what's your box password, and log in, and then we'll create that establishment for them. So that's another direction to attack the kind of more personal user-focused problems and challenges. Second piece of that, permissions mapping, it's exactly what we do, and what we do is we ask you to provide a map between your AD and your box. If they're integrated or SSO or something like that, it's as straightforward as checking a couple boxes that says, hey, box, do you know someone called Steve Woodward? Yes, I do, and then linking those together. So we basically need to translate, say, portal arc, swoodward, the domain type thing, into swoodward@portalarchitects.com. We have tools to do that, AD integrations. There's several different ways to get about that. So we certainly support that. And then once you do that and provide us that information, as we go and we migrate files one by one, we examine those ACLs. We will then transfer those to Box where we can, knowing that there's limitations in the model with the waterfall and things. Anything we can't transfer, we raise as a warning to the admins to know that, hey, you broke inheritance here, you asked us to do this, Box's model doesn't support it, just FYI, you'll need to address this in a different way. So that's in the product today. We can certainly demo that for anyone who's interested. Just reach out to us offline from this meeting.
Great, thanks. And I think we've gone a few minutes over the top of the hour, but there are actually still some other questions that we've not had a chance to answer around licensing and around more in-depth technical questions. So I would strongly encourage everyone to reach out. The contact info is on the slide that you see in front of you. We're going to be following up later this week or next week with a recording of this webinar as well as additional information. So the SkySync team would definitely be glad to meet individually with universities that are interested in finding out more and answer those questions as well. Feel free to reach out to the Internet2 team, and we can put you in touch with Mark and Steve if needed, or we're glad to join in as well. I really want to thank everyone for making the time to join today, for the excellent questions and discussions from the attendees, and especially to Cliff Russell for sharing Morehouse College's experiences, and Mark, Steve, and the entire SkySync team for organizing the webinar and demo today. So thank you all. And please feel free to reach out if you have additional questions or would like more information on the SkySync solution.